The Striker's Gearset is the best DPS gearset in the Division 2, right? But one of my subscribers posed a question about it that I just had to look into. So what makes Striker so good? Well, it's the gearset talent, Striker's Gamble, which increases total weapon damage by 1% with the backpack every time you hit an enemy, and it stacks up to 100% weapon damage buff. This is good, but what makes it great is that this damage buff is multiplicative. Hang on. Hello? You don't know the difference between additive and multiplicative damage? Okay, there are already some great videos out there on the Division 2's damage buckets, which I will link in the description below. But let me give you a brief and very simple overview. Say you have a weapon damage modifier of 128% from all of your attributes on your build, like this Striker's build does. If you add 10% to it, you would have a new damage modifier of 138%. But if you applied a 10% multiplicative increase to damage, then 128% multiplied by 10% is 12.8%. Add this to the base modifier and you get 140.8%, and that is bigger than 138%. Told you it was simple. But back to my subscriber's question. What they had observed was that when they were playing solo, most of the time they were struggling to maintain half stacks with the chest and backpack, unless fighting a boss or using an ACS 12 to build up stacks quickly. So the question is, how many stacks do you need for the Strikers to outperform a similar brand set build? To answer that, I needed to recreate the damage output for both a Strikers build like this one and this brand set build. There are various different pre-built damage calculators for Division 2, which are pretty easy to find. I'm using this one, which comes with a guide on YouTube, a link to which is in the description below. Banging all of the stats from the Strikers build into an input area I added to the spreadsheet kicks out that the build will do 139,000 for a non-crit and 383k for a crit on an armoured enemy with no stacks. Testing this in the firing range, and yes, the damage calculator works. The small difference is due to some of the rounding that goes on behind the scenes. Applying the critical hit chance of the build to these values gives us an average per shot damage of 280,000 with no stacks. I then duplicated the spreadsheet and ran the model at a full 100 Striker stacks without the chest piece. Non-crit damage will be 277,000 and critical hits on an armoured enemy will deal 765,000, which gives us an average of 560,000. With this data, I could then plot out the damage as the Striker stacks increased, but I want to look at average damage only, so let's remove critical hit damage, non-critical hit damage, and then add in the average per shot data I get from the spreadsheet for the brand set build of 460,000 per shot, which it does for every shot because I set up the build with talents that are fixed buffs rather than scaling ones to reduce the number of variables we are looking at. This is the point at which the Striker's build starts to outperform the brand set build, which is at 65 stacks. But that isn't the full story, because of course all the way up to that point the brand set build will be outperforming the Striker's build. So if we were able to shoot one enemy infinitely, how many times would we need to hit it before the damage done by the Striker's build overtakes the brand set build? This is the graph for the cumulative damage done. And this is the point where the Striker's build starts to catch up at 65 stacks. And here is where it reaches max stacks, when cumulative damage is still well below that of the brand set build. In fact, it takes another 43 hits at max stacks before the Striker's build catches up. Now, the one thing this doesn't layer in is the 15% rate of fire buff that the Striker's build has. This won't change the cumulative damage done, but you would increase damage per second, so allow for a little bit of margin when looking at the results. But let's bring everything back to how I started this video. The Striker's Gearset is the best DPS gearset in Division 2, as long as you can maintain close to 65 stacks for the majority of an encounter, and that will very much depend on the type of content that you are playing and your playstyle.